Let's call this meeting to order. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed, and you can join us online by going to our website. Live stream is also available at tctvonline.com. Click on Live Broadcasts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute your phones. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Public comment. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to the public comments email on our website. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email public comments by 12 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners office at 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Do we have anyone signed up in the room or has registered online for public comment? Okay. All right, well, welcome. I will invite our guests to sign the guest list, and we're going to open the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Starr, will you lead us, please?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. So we don't have any public comment this morning. We do have an unscheduled item that we will take towards the end of the meeting after the executive session. So with that, we will jump right. Yes,
Can you state what that is in case the leadership team is listening?
absolutely.
Thank you.
So how about if you state what that is?
We had discussed the next conversation regarding the CAO position and the central services. The new central services department would continue today at 3 p.m. And given some other topics that we have at 3 p.m., we're going to potentially discuss them after the executive sessions at the end of the board meeting today. So I just want to let the leadership team know that, and I'm going to send out an email now with that information as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. So we don't know how long the conversation will be, but there's a lot to work through, and so we'll probably split it up. So we'll do some of it today and continue the conversation this afternoon. All right. With that, we will jump right into the agenda with item 5, consideration of an agreement with Juliet's House with Tillamook County on behalf of the Tillamook County Child Abuse Multidisciplinary Team for Medical Assessments. Please come up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Will you please introduce yourself for the record?
I am Sarah Dental, and I am with the Tillamook Child Advocacy Center, Tillamook County Child Advocacy Center. I'm here representing the agreement that we have regarding Juliet's House. Juliet's House is a provider in McMinnville who we have a long-standing relationship within our county and our MDT. They provide medical evaluations for us when we're unable to do so for children, and they also will provide forensic interviews when we're unable to do so as well. So, on another note, we did just hear back from the Secretary of the State, and Tillamook County Child Advocacy Center got a thumbs up from them, and we're waiting on our EIN from the IRS. So, good stuff.
Congratulations.
Yeah, there's some good stuff happening. So.
That is exciting. Congratulations, and thank you for your work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people that have put a lot of time and effort into this over the years. So I'm happy to see this push forward and continue to serve the kids in our community and our families that are here that need these services to be here. So
That's great.
But this contract that's before you is one that allows us to while we figure out our plan locally, it allows us to make sure that needs of family and children are met in a really nice way. They provide wonderful services for us. So,
Great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Sarah. This is fabulous. I'm super excited that we are setting up our own child advocacy center here in Tillamook County. I know that for the last few years, we've been talking about that. Whenever these contracts come in front of us, we've talked about the plan to set this up locally. So it's exciting that it's happening, and I greatly appreciate Juliet's House for the work they do and for the support they've provided and will continue to provide as we move forward. So I am in support.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. I certainly am support as well, and it's part of a much bigger system that I think is a really good thing in Tillamook County. We have a lot of services that I'm not sure are available in smaller counties, and we have 28,000 people here, many of whom are youngsters, need some help from time to time. So good for you. Let's do it.
Sounds good.
Agreed. So yes, and I'm very grateful that we're moving toward being able to offer those things locally. So thanks again for that. All right, I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of an agreement with Juliet's House with Tillamook County on behalf of the Tillamook County Child Abuse Multidisciplinary Team for Medical Assessments, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Sarah, and thanks for being here. Okay, item 6 is consideration of an out-of-state travel request for Josh Brown to attend the Western States Sheriff's Association Annual Conference in Reno, Nevada, from March 9 to March 13, 2025, presumably. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So this is for the Western State Sheriff's Conference in Reno, Nevada. They have it every year at the Peppermill. It's a large enough venue to house all of the sheriffs from representing every state from west of the Mississippi, pretty much. This is the conference that I attend every other year. I do that for two reasons. One is to balance the importance of networking and attending a very high quality conference. And the other reason is to try to balance a fiscal responsibility, so I'm not spending the money every year. So this is the every other year that I attend, and that's what it is. So any questions, I can take them.
Thank you. Questions for the sheriff?
Thank you. No, not really. I've been to lots of different kinds of conferences, and as I've said before, I think sometimes you learn as much at lunchtime or just visiting in the hall as you do in some more formal setting. And so I absolutely would see this as a good thing because we're none of us in this alone. I've always wondered, as I've said before, why it is these conferences are never held in North Dakota. They're always in Las Vegas or Reno or Orlando or somewhere like that, but it is what it is. And so, yes, I certainly support nothing wrong with sharing war stories because there's what we face here, I think, has probably been faced elsewhere, and no point in reinventing the wheel.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think for all of us, conferences are really important in terms of staying abreast of best practices and, as Commissioner Olson has indicated, learning from our peers. So I'm completely in support.
As am I, and ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of an out-of-state travel request for Josh Brown to attend the Western States Sheriff's Association Annual Conference in Reno, Nevada from 3/9 to 3/13/2025, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, and I'm off to my next meeting.
Okay. All right. Item 7 is consideration of a memorandum of understanding with the Tillamook Estuaries Partnership and other parties for the Northwest Oregon Restoration Partnership Program. Do we have Chris Leidy with us? No.
We do not. We have the next best solution.
We've-
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Jasper Lynn from Tillamook County Public Works today.
Good morning, Jeff.
So I'm happy to present this memorandum of understanding with Tillamook Estuaries Partnership. Um, Functionally, it is a component of habitat restoration that would be advanced through this. In our various projects where we are replacing old culverts that are outdated or potentially failing with these new bridges, oftentimes a great deal of that funding is coming to us through habitat restoration funds. Um, this would be a mechanism by which we can not only leverage some of these planting requirements as an in-kind donation, but it would also give us greater adaptability in terms of what kind of things we're planting out there so that we can work with the adjacent landowners to find solutions that'll work both for our funding, our projects, and also the folks that are fortunate enough to live alongside these habitat restoration projects.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Thank you. No, I have no questions. This is a partnership that I think's been around for a while, doing good things and more of it. So keep going.
Thank you very much.
Just curious, I don't have it in my stack of documents to sign this morning. I wanted to know if there was a delay on that or if.
So it is not in the stack of documents to sign. It was intended to be signed just by our director. We wanted to make sure that the board would approve of that signing off, since it was just our department that was aiming to have this particular partnership. If it works well, it might be something that is expandable to the other departments if that is a functional purpose. But in this case, it was written up in such a manner that our director would be able to sign it. But we didn't want to proceed without the board's awareness and approval of it.
Yeah, so this should be signed by the board, but if you authorize Chris to sign it, it would be acceptable in this case.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. I'm comfortable with that. I think that, TEP is a great organization. I think the partnership sounds like a fabulous opportunity, and I'm very comfortable with Chris signing for that.
Okay, as am I.
Okay, I will
You
make
ready?
the motion read as smoothly as I can with that. In consideration of a memorandum of understanding with the Tillamook Estuaries Partnership and other parties for the Northwest Oregon Restoration Partnership Program and authorization of Chris Laity to sign that memorandum of understanding, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. All
Thank you,
right.
commissioners.
Thank you.
Jasper. Item 8 is consideration of an order in the matter of the appointment of members to the Tillamook County Housing Commission. Now it's Parker's turn.
Hello, good morning, commissioners. Yes, we have several new applicants that are very qualified to the County Housing Commission. Chris Wilkes is a established and fantastic contractor who's given a lot of insight into that world. And Gail Lucet has much planning experience that will be extremely helpful to us. And Nan Devlin is able to represent the entire tourism and service industry, and that really fills out our major employer representation.
Fabulous. Commissioners?
It is exciting to have new housing commission members coming on. Everyone brings such great perspective. Having Chris Wilkes, he's been participating in the last few meetings. It's helpful to have a contractor at the table. That perspective when our goal is to create a developer-friendly environment, just really a good addition. And of course, Gail Uzell was with us as one of the founding members. And so it would be a delight to have her back. Her long experience on the Planning Commission, again, brings a really crucial voice. And of course, Nan Devlin is just always delightful to have at the table. And again, such a large industry for our community that I think having her as a large employer representative is actually a great way to make sure that voice is heard.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. I too support this. I know two of the three, and you'll certainly do the right thing, I think, all the time. And housing, of course, is key to most everything that happens in this county. If you don't have a place to live or something that's affordable, that's a problem, and don't have a solution for everything immediately, but this is a good step forward to get the right people on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I am also supportive and grateful. I'm grateful to Chris Wilkes for his willingness to serve and to Gail Ozell for her long-standing public service. and to Nan as well for her expertise and the generosity of her time. So I think this is great, and we're ready for a motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of order number 24-064, in the matter of the appointment of members to the Tillamook County Housing Commission, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Parker.
Thank you, commissioners. It's a great team we have over there.
Wonderful. Okay, item 9 is consideration of an order and resolution in the matter of the appointment of a member to the Northwest Oregon Housing Authority Board of Directors. I'm going to talk about this. The Northwest Oregon Housing Authority has representatives from Tillamook County, Clatsop County, and Columbia County, and we needed to appoint a member from Tillamook County because we had the resignation of another member, and Ed Gallagher, who previously has served on the Tillamook County Housing Commission, is willing to be appointed to the Northwest Oregon Housing Authority Board. He has met with our director. He's attended a board meeting. We're very enthusiastic about having his contributions and his expertise in the area of housing, and I am pleased to present this order. Commissioners?
Wonderful. Ed has such an amazing, deep and varied experience in relation to housing, housing development, economic development. I mean, just he's really served, I would say, for so much of his life in those areas and has extensive knowledge. Having him as part of the Housing Authority Board will be a fabulous asset. So I am completely in support and very thankful that he is willing to continue his service to the community.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. As am I. I know Ed, and if he's on anything that will help, whatever it is the cause is, he'll help it get it done because he's a person of action. And so, yes, I absolutely support, and I'm glad he's volunteered more time.
Thank you. Me too. I am grateful. We're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of Order 24-065 and Resolution R24-016, in the matter of the appointment of a member to the Northwest Oregon Housing Authority Board of Directors, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we are going to go into executive session under what ORS, Bill?
We're actually going to go under two, 1926602E, and that's to talk with people who you have designated to conduct real property transactions on your behalf, and also 1926602D, which allows you to talk with people who you've designated to conduct labor relations and discussions. So that's what we'll do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So we're going into executive session at 9:19 a.m. Thereafter, when we come back from executive session, we'll come back into our regular session. We'll take our unscheduled item and board concerns at the.
Okay.
Good to go? All right, we are reconvening our regular board meeting at 9:51 a.m. We did not make any decisions in executive session, and we're going to move right into an unscheduled item to discuss the matter of adopting the Chief Administrative Officer job classification and other related topics. And I'm going to turn this right over to Rachel and also announce to folks that we don't necessarily expect to conclude this conversation now, and if we don't, we may carry it over to this afternoon's board briefing at 3 o'clock.
Sounds good. So last week in the board briefing, I presented the draft job description for the Chief Administrative Officer position, and we had a good discussion about that. I made some updates and prepared an updated draft for your discussion today. Additionally, we walked through several edits to the board's policy, which would also be adopted by board order that reflects as needed changes that we're talking about with regard to central services. So last night I shared 3 documents with the leadership team, including the board. The first being the adoption of the job description and some other, and that order also includes some other provisions regarding the position that are set forth in the order, not the job description. A second board order that forms the executive team. You may recall that this was in the board policy. I've decided to take it out of the policy and put it in a board order, and we'll discuss that further when we get to that order discussion. And then a third board order that updates the policy. And then attached to the first order is the job description update, and attached to the third order is the policy update. So lots of documents to go through. So starting with the job description,
And can I ask you, does Paul have a?
he was on the email yesterday.
Thank you.
Okay, so starting with the job description and in the order, there's an effective date that needs to be discussed. I have December 1st, but that's flexible. The order attaches the job description. Provision 4 says that the CAO will perform the duties set forth in the job description. It establishes a probationary period for the CAO position and the Central Services Department. Over the last couple months, there's been a lot of discussion of how big this change is, and we all want to have some comfort in flexibility to proceed through its evolution, as well as abandon all of it and go back to how it was. So I would recommend a minimum 1-year probation, because a lot of the things that we're talking about are very big. And to really know if they are functioning well, or if the CAO position is functioning well, we may need a little bit longer, but I'm starting with a 1-year provision. But it does say, jumping to provision 8, the probation period set forth in this order may be extended, so you have that flexibility. Provision 6 describes the probationary period with 60 days notice by either myself or the board. And it describes the opportunity to eliminate the CAO position and or the Central Services Department.
Do you want questions as we go?
Sure.
Okay, so in that, I have questions about, it says the board or CAO are offered the opportunity to eliminate the CAO position or Central Services Department if determined by the board or CAO. So I'm wondering about the possibility, this creates the possibility that the CAO could decide it without the board.
That wasn't the
It doesn't say and.
intent, so maybe that wording needs to be updated. When I was writing this, it was if I did not feel like I was operating in a good capacity as the CAO, or I didn't think the Central Services Department was functioning well, I would recommend to you, as opposed to you recommending it. So it wasn't that I had the final decision, it was that the initial recommendation was coming from me.
Okay.
So I can clean that up.
The opportunity to recommend.
To recommend,
elimination
yep.
of the
And then
CAO
ultimately
or-
approved by the board.
Right.
Yes.
So I have a fundamental question on this. If you go up one notch higher, the board can, as we are doing now, we're creating this. And if things aren't working well in the judgment of the board, based on any number of inputs, why couldn't we uncreate it, or the then board? I won't be on it, but why do we need a board order that memorializes this? If things aren't working, the board can change it, period.
That's absolutely right, but I think it's important to memorialize that in a board order. So you would absolutely have the authority to do so, but as you'll see when we get to the personnel requisition discussion, there are a lot of things in the county that happen and nobody knows why or what the process is. And so this is a very clear process that you created Central.
That makes sense.
That you created Central Services, you created the CAO position, and ultimately, if you don't want to do either of those, you have the authority by board order.
So even though it has a year, if at month 7, things are coming unraveled, the board then can say, hey, this isn't working, we're gonna change it or reverse it, or do whatever needs to do to go forward.
Correct. And
Okay.
provision 8 says no later than August 25. And I backed that out of the 60 days notice from December.
So this,
You could
this,
decide in 2 months if you wanted to.
this doesn't really tie the board's hands, it simply memorializes the
Yes,
process.
yes.
Okay, that's fine.
I feel good about that, and also I feel good about the fact that we have acknowledged officially, through the whole process, we have acknowledged that this is a pilot. And we hope it's gonna work out beautifully, and if it doesn't, we want you to be able to go back to your previous role. So I think it's good to call that out and say, this is a pilot, and if we change course, you can go back to your previous role.
And then provision 7 just states that I'll provide regular updates to the board regarding how all of this is working. I had 1 month, 2 months, and we know how schedules are and how there may not be a potential to really provide you an update in a month or 2, but I don't anticipate that happening. So this provides a little bit more flexibility into the updates, but I certainly expect to be doing updates at the board briefing or other meeting on at least a monthly basis.
So I don't want to add to your workload right now, so I'm hesitant to even say this, but I think it would be great if, in the way that we have, we provide onboarding documents for other new leaders, to be able to, at some point for you, and maybe you've already done this, to be able to set out the goals of the position for a year or 6 months or whatever, so that we could check in a measurable way, like, have you hit these 3 months goals, 6 months goals, etc.
I do have that. It's in some earlier documents I've sent you with the timeline that had 2025 and 2026. So those are high-level ones. And then I have a list of this many things that are just ideas that have came to me that I've just been cataloging, that after I get past this, I will make a more detailed map and share
Great.
that. So
Great.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, other questions on Board Order 1?
Nope, I don't have any. Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, the job description that accompanies as an attachment, Board Order 1. There weren't a lot of revisions. There's one outstanding highlighted section. The only other change I was going to make was regarding the coordination piece with the budget process and the treasurer. So that change was going to be made in the summary. And when I went to make the proposed language was coordinating and collaborating in the annual budget process with the treasurer. And when I went to work on that revision, I didn't catch it in the moment in the meeting, but when I went to work on it, I remembered that the detail regarding that process is actually under the finance and budget, and it includes coordinating with not only the budget officer, but the finance officer and the executive team. So if I were to further elaborate on what the budget process means in the summary, it's a cut and paste of the bullet, and it just felt like extraneous information that other items in the summary didn't have. So did want to call attention to that, it's not meant to coordinate in a silo the annual budget process. That's just for readability in the summary and not being duplicative. And the full language is under finance and budget that describes other people and groups that I'm working with, that I would be working with. So the only other thing that came out last week was, actually didn't come out last week, it came up in a follow-up conversation that Commissioner Bell and I had regarding the hiring of the HR director position, is who has the authority, who is signing off on that, who ultimately has the authority. So with this new structure, electeds are not part of that process of you appointing them because they're elected. You have departments that are not in central services, like the surveyor's office, community development. You appoint those directors and nothing is changing in how that works. Then you have the central services department directors. Two of the central services, and two of the central services departments, BOC and facilities, don't have a director that this applies to. It's me, it's Kevin, who's not a director. So I have authority over Kevin for signing anything regarding personal action forms regarding that position. But what was included in the job description, but it wasn't discussed in the meeting, and there was uncertainty about whether it should be there, is under the second bullet under county operations, responsible for all aspects of Central Services Department administration, including director hiring and supervision. So that would apply to the IS director and the HR director. So it was my understanding in preparing this originally, that's what you were looking for. But there was some uncertainty that Commissioner Bell raised, and so that needs to be decided.
Thank you.
Obviously, I would be working as a team and hiring those positions like we do with all other director positions, but ultimately, who is the final authority?
Thank you for introducing that. I did bring that up. We did talk about it because I didn't assume that the commissioners would not continue hiring the director positions. I assumed that we would. And so, but obviously there's a new relationship because we would want to do it in collaboration with the CAO because you know, we don't want to hire people that make hires that you don't support. So my hope is that we would have some collaborative system moving forward because those two positions, the HR director and the IS director, are just so important that it doesn't make sense to me that we wouldn't be involved in their hiring.
Yep. I agree. So I don't know if the language is good as is. So I think there's three options. The language is good as is. Language needs to be added to that just further clarifies, kind of like the budget process, in coordination with you and whoever else perhaps. Or the third is it's taken out of there and you retain that authority. So I think those are your three options.
And I think I would like the collaborative option. I think that as CAO, you need to be actively engaged and have an equal voice to ours when we're talking about who we're hiring, because you're going to be supervising their work, right? So I feel like that would be a collaborative process for hiring, but that then for supervision, that becomes your supervision, not ours.
I agree.
And that would be something, if I go rogue and I hire these directors and all three of you disagreed, that would obviously be coming in my performance of the position. I mean, you have the ability to react to my decisions and make changes accordingly. So if I hire two directors and the three of you disagreed with that hire, you could rescind this authority that you've afforded me.
Well, what I think.
If you're going the collaborative way.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about collaborative is that we make the decision together. And we make the hiring decision together. So you wouldn't go rogue because we'd be making it together.
I completely agree. I'm just, I think this is a worst case scenario that we wouldn't get to, but I think it's important to have clarity because a lot of our processes do not have clarity. If there's a split vote on who to hire, who makes the decision? And again, I don't think we would get there, but I think it's important to have the clarity on that. And if you want to keep it, I'm fine with that. I think it should be in here.
I think if you hire someone, when you hire someone, then that responsibility, I think it should be 100% her, which is not to say you can't participate in the interview and come to a decision, which I expect will happen 99% of the time. But if she's accountable, she also has to be responsible for that position, not necessarily her. And if you spread it over 4 people, who's accountable? Collectively, everyone, but also no one. See what I'm saying?
I do, but I disagree. Because I think in terms of hiring, like we currently have a team approach to hiring. And I'm saying the team would include Rachel. And, you know, we could end up with and in this instance, Rachel could have a vote in specifically in the hiring decision. You know, I want you to have full participation. I just don't want us to have less participation.
And yeah, and Doug, you're not doing that now with your other directors. You're currently in the position of no one person is accountable for other directors.
No, but that's partly why I'm saying,
Yeah.
you know, you bring it back to a single point of accountability and responsibility. But then, as a collaborative approach, I think that's a good way forward because, you know, 4 sets of eyes are better than one, usually. And so you work it out. I can't imagine, at least with the current people, it would be much of an issue. But, you know, down the road, maybe and if you had a big decision, let's say split 4 to 4, 2 to 2, you probably wouldn't go forward. You'd say, well, we got to work through this, or we can go to the next candidate and compare those. And, you know, it's a collaborative process rolling forward. I'm just thinking that, you know, if you want somebody to be accountable, you got to give them the authority to do stuff over which they're accountable.
Which would be the supervision.
Right.
So we could have it read responsible for all aspects of Central Services Department administration, including director supervision and everything else. And then add a clarifying statement that regarding the hiring process, it would be a collaborative effort with the board, and I would just leave it at the board, but there would be other leaders as well.
Okay.
Just
I
go
think
with
it's
that.
important that it calls out that you have a vote, though. I think that that's one of the things that is changing as you move into the CAO role, is that while you work at the pleasure of the board, your voice now will be an elevated voice, and one that we need to acknowledge as an elevated voice, right? So, and I don't know exactly where that ends up in any of these documents, but I think it's really important for us to hear your voice on a regular basis, for you to feel confident and feel like your role is to engage with us in conversation, as opposed to as chief of staff, you've been in a position where you engage only if we ask you to engage. And I feel like part of the CAO role is that we are going to be asking you to take on the responsibilities for bringing us solutions to challenges, finding solutions and bringing us challenges. We're asking you to take on a much more active, engaged role in the management of the sort of coordinating of operations in the county, and that we have to somehow figure out where we spell it out and how it works, but that your voice becomes, you're able to jump in. You're able to say, you know, put your hand up and to be called out to speak on a regular basis when you're the one that has the information, because we're going to find ourselves in a different situation where we don't have the information at the level we have had on an issue we've assigned to you, because we've been doing the research. Now you're going to do it, right? So I feel like this is one of many spaces that we're going to need to tease out how we give you permission to participate more fully, and not wait for us just to ask you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Does that, fellow commissioners, does that make sense? I'm kind of fuzzy in what I'm saying, I think.
No, I agree. I think that in Rachel's role, you are always respectful, and I'm imagine you would continue to be, but you will have more authority in this role, and so we will want a different degree of partnership with you.
Okay. So I will strike hiring, add some language about equal, just regarding this piece about the hiring process, more of an equal role or vote.
Sure.
However that, okay. Okay, good. Anything else? Nothing else I think changed. Required knowledge, skills, and abilities. Again, this, I gave Mary Jo the duties, responsibilities, and I said, fill in the rest as appropriate. So everything under required knowledge, skills, and abilities is her expert input.
And you added the bullet for the Veterans Department, so thank you for that.
Yes, yep, yeah, sorry that was unclear. I hadn't thought about the fact that Nick not being a director.
Oh, it was a
yeah.
learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Love those learning opportunities.
Paul, do you have any feedback at this point?
So with that, the next step with this is, I will make that revision and send it all to you individually to get a thumbs up. And then, I will send this description and Isabel's updated job description to Commissioner Bell to forward on to Troop for the marketing piece, and then we'll receive that back. And then once we receive that back, I'm not sure, because I do not want to be a part of the process, and I know, I don't know what this is going to come back to be. I don't know what the wage will come back to be, but I want to talk with council about if it's appropriate to set up a meeting between the board and Troop where Troop just shares this information in executive session. I know we can share information and not deliberate. So you can hear how they arrived at the numbers that they arrived at for both Isabel and I. And that's as far as I got with that. But I think it's important for you to hear and for you all to see directly from Troop what they've landed on.
I agree, and I agree that you shouldn't make a recommendation. You shouldn't be involved in it, and that speaks to concerns last year that we had about not wanting the HR director to be in the position to recommend her or his in the future own salary also. So I am agreeing is specific to this situation, but also in principle that people shouldn't be recommending their own salaries.
Yeah. So then, and then you would make that recommendation to be included in a pay table that the treasurer's office prepares. I don't know if HR is doing that at this point or if it's a treasurer. I think it might have switched, but regardless. And then is it the treasurer? Okay.
I think we would ask the treasurer to in this case.
And so the pay tables would come before you at the same time all of this others does, all the other information does. So that's just kind of forward thinking there. So I'll try to make that revision quickly and get that because it'll take some time to analyze.
Okay. And that's when you said earlier, you said that the timeline might change. That's what that's about.
Yeah.
Okay. So
In lieu of any other policy, longer term discussions that need further discussion, but I don't think we're there with that.
okay.
So other questions on the first order or the job description?
I don't. Paul, do you have any questions on the first order or the job description?
No, I'm sorry I hung up by accident there. No, I just worry about Rachel's work-life balance with the amount of work that she's going to be doing.
Thank you.
That's all.
Yeah, thank you. Me too.
There is no balance. I'll just
Right.
say that.
I'm sure that's true.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You think there's a work-life balance right now?
You went to the ball games this weekend.
I didn't actually go to the ball games. I was on vacation and I worked half the time, but nonetheless.
So I have one question, Rachel. And this is sort of per the conversation I think Mike brought up. Is there any benefit to you to moving the order and the job description forward pending, a retro pay based on what we determine? Is there any benefit in doing that from your perspective?
Yeah, it gets always done. If this was ready, I think it's going to be ready on the 27th. I think the policy, we do have some things to work through, but I think we can, if there's any outstanding things, I can work offline with you all and bring the final one back. So I think, other than the wage, I think everything else is going to be ready by the 27th. So, yes, and then when the wage, the only thing to adopt would be the pay table, and you can make that effective whenever you want.
Okay.
So yeah, we can keep these effective. I'm already appointed to the CAO position, so if you wanted to, you could go back to that date. These will be effective December 1st, which I think is still appropriate from an operational standpoint, and whenever you decide to assert the pay is, I guess, really an outstanding question, which we can decide later.
Feels like that might allow you to check this off your list and put it aside and not have it still feel like it's hanging over your head. To Paul's comment about work-life balance, I know this is not going to shift that scale, significantly, but it is a check the box. You can say that is done, and you then are in complete awareness of the expectations of you. I don't know, colleagues.
Yeah. With the start and stop, when I was talking about that at the last board meeting, this would be a full stop to then revisit again in a couple of weeks, whenever the pay tables are ready. So yeah, I think that could be a good solution.
Yeah, I support that. I don't, it
Okay.
doesn't seem like we need to wait for the true
Yeah.
information.
Because I don't think that that's going to be your deciding factor. Although you could back out based on that. Knowing you the way I do, I kind of doubt that's going to be your deciding factor. Since you said yes, completely blind to the job description and the wage.
Okay, so board order 2. So the executive team was set forth in the policy, which I think could have worked. But since we talked last, I've been giving a lot of thought, and I've talked with some of you individually, and Mike, about the appointment process. And I just think while the executive team is created to support the CAO and countywide policies and strategies, some of which will ultimately be approved by the board, we don't want this to appear to be an exclusive group that Rachel cherry-picked. I'll just say it like that, because it is not. You know,
Right.
there's examples of, or there's criteria set forth that we're going to go through that describes what I was looking for in people. And they are willing, their supervisors are willing to have them serve on this team. And so I do think it's important that the board approves the appointments. And customary with other advisory committees, you do create them by board order. So I pulled those out of the policy. We will go in this a little more detail because there is a lot more language than was in the policy, just to further elaborate on what it is. So this board order creates the executive team and appoints the members. It is very clear in provision 5 that this is a working committee. It is not anticipated that, generally speaking, they will just meet once a month and I will provide updates and we'll walk away and go about the rest of their day until we meet again in a month. That may happen and it is likely to happen, but the general purpose is for this to be a working committee that they actually go away and do work and report back.
So you're appointing these, or when this goes forward, you'd be appointed by name, not by position.
Correct.
So when one person leaves or retires or something, circumstances change, then that takes another board order for an individual. So the mix of positions is not position-based, it's individual-based.
Correct.
And that's the way it would go forward then.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. The language about the tasks is the same: strategic planning, department evaluations, process improvements, financial planning. It's not an exhaustive list. CAO would serve as chair. It's a good suggestion to put the number of members in 5. There's a total of 6 with me. But as we talked last time, having a small group is better than a large group. So I put 5 to 7 members from the county leadership or manager teams who are not elected. Provision 8, I won't go into all these, but just a lot of criteria around, you know, organizational thinking, engagement, different skills and passion for broader visioning, organizational improvement, communication, working as a team. So Mike was real helpful in putting some of this, most of this part together, which I thought was really good input.
That's good.
9 affirms you are the body appointing the members. I'm suggesting not having an appointment term. I don't think it's necessary in this case. They'll serve on the team until it's revised by board order, and I think there just should be a lot of flexibility in whether it's turnover or maybe someone just doesn't have the capacity to participate anymore, or for whatever reason. And then we would bring a recommendation, or I would bring a recommendation to you for a replacement or not, depending on, you know, how the team's functioning and what the size is at that point. And then we could present to you a revision for the order. The members serve at the pleasure of the CAO, and then the list of members. I think that's it.
I think it's great. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think it looks good. I think, I don't know if this makes any sense to have here or how, if it's just, it's a question, how does somebody step away from the executive team? Is there a process or anything that needs to be put in place? Or is that just, they just let you know and then you just reappoint them? Or
I think so. I wasn't
okay.
trying to overthink it.
just in our interest of clarity and how we've been trying to kind of make sure that everything is as spelled out as it needs to be, and maybe it doesn't need to be. Just a curiosity, thinking about how sometimes other boards will indicate how someone exits.
So with this approach, you said you worked with Mike on it. So Mike, can I ask you a question? Where, in your wide experience, I'm assuming you've had something similar, or you wouldn't have recommended it. What are the odds of success? Is it individual based or collective based, or the model? How does the model really function over a period of 4 or 5 years?
Well, if it's functioning successfully, it'll be skill-based more than anything else. There's different skill elements in your organization, not related to organizational hierarchy as much as to background and understanding. And they are, hierarchy deals with direct reports and that kind of stuff. This deals with mostly method and condition. And you need to be knowledgeable, for example, on the budgeting process. Somebody has to really be knowledgeable about the analytical level, and so you put them on as opposed to somebody else. And some people have increasing skills in the organization which you want to capture, or the topic requires that somebody else be involved in that. And as Rachel said, the key is not to have this represent the in-group versus everybody else. This is a mechanism for analyzing and communicating, and then bringing the decisions forward in a way that everybody gets their fingers on.
So who determines then if it's working or not working?
Well, I really think it is the CEO, CAO that determines it. But in the final analysis, the board would be getting feedback, I think, pretty heavy if it was going sideways, which would result in a discussion, I think, at the performance evaluation level with the CAO. So these are just mechanisms to try to keep. Remember, we talked about as you get more central to the organization, you have a broader horizon, but you don't have as much detailed knowledge. And this is an attempt to capture the detailed knowledge and pull it into a broader horizon type of work.
Sure. Okay, well, thank you. I understand it. And right now there are 5. When you've done this before, is there a magic number? Is 7 better than 5? Or, you go to 9, it might become unwieldy. I'm assuming 5 is like a board. It's a pretty workable number, and you get some diversity of skills and opinions. And it would seem to me you got it right here. I'm just asking if you've seen bigger numbers and if they imploded or what happened.
The bigger the number, just the mechanics of airtime in a meeting will drive up the time that is committed by the organization. And I think the way to deal with specialty issues that you need additional people with is to assign have this group be allowed, or the chief administrative officer be allowed to say, I would like to put together a special task team that will report back to us on this topic, let's say classifications. And they would bring a recommendation back to this group, and then this group would make the decision. So that would be time determinate or topic determinate, as opposed to continuing to work in this particular role. More is not my experience merrier. It's more difficult, not because people are being bad, just the mechanics of it get overwhelming. And you're doing a cost benefit analysis here. We're taking time from very valuable people committed to very important roles and saying it's worth our time and money to pull them in to look at a broader agenda. And I would try to keep it relatively small. If it needs, you know, the most executive teams, uh, you know, should be in the 3 to 5 area, and I felt 3 was just too narrow given the assignments you have in your strategic plan.
Okay, well, that makes sense, and I remember you said, which I happen to agree with, if every time you add another person, you add a half hour or an hour to a meeting, and it just drags out. But no, I'm very comfortable with this. I just wanted to hear maybe something happens on the fringes and where we go. But this is a really, really good start, so let's do it.
Well, one of the assignments, and just an addition here, that this group, that the CO will be assigning this group to, is their responsibility to communicate with their peers and associates. They don't get the luxury of being in the meeting and just absorbing it. If a particular part of the team is not getting communication, it's a discussion between the chief administrative officer and that person about, wait a minute, you're on this team. We need this kind of product.
Thank you.
My only question on this, I think it's great. I think it's a good way to move forward. I was thinking about the out clause that we put in the CAO. Is there an out clause that indicates that if central services CAO goes away, that or maybe it's determined this isn't needed, do we need an out clause?
We can. You don't usually have those in your committee orders because
Yeah.
you can change it whenever you want.
Okay.
It's kind of implied, but
Yep.
I appreciate the point that we're trying to have more clarity, but
Yeah, I was thinking of is
yeah.
it's just
these are at the board's whim.
Yeah.
Really, if you wanted to change anything about it, you ask me to prepare a board order and we go from there.
My only question is about no terms. Like, I guess what I'm wondering is for this team, not that I think it's in the best interest to change them up. I don't. But for this team, would it be, have you guys had the conversation about if you sign on to this is for life? Or if you had a conversation about, this is for a couple years, you can let us know if you're in a difficult spot, that all of these people have a lot of responsibility. So
kind of. We did not talk about the term at all because I wasn't thinking that there would be one. I did try, I think with everyone, to convey what I thought would be a flexible, accommodating group. So we may have projects that, maybe it's in the middle of budget season. Deborah can't participate. That's fine. Or it's during Fair Week and Matt can't participate or whatever. I think there's a lot of flexibility. I don't want this to be a rigid group.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried to convey that to the individuals that I spoke with for what that's worth.
Okay.
So we can put terms. I mean, we can put a lot more specificity. I was intentionally trying to keep this a little casual, which is actually why it was originally in the policy, except for the checks and balances with, I don't want to be perceived as cherry picking individuals without other input. So, but we can add more specificity if you think it's valuable.
So one other question. It says number 10 is the members serve at the pleasure of the CAO, and I don't want to assume that anyone would ever want to we would ever want to remove anyone, but I think this is another place where the CAO and the board, sort of like the hiring of the HR, is there a space where a decision needs to be made? A board member feels that a certain person shouldn't be on the team. The CAO feels they should. Is there enough specificity in here to get us through that, what could be a difficult situation?
So
or vice versa, the CAO wants them off because they're not being helpful, but the board doesn't want them off.
This is a very unique type of committee. I don't think we have anything else like this. In talking with Mike, he provided clarity that the purpose of this group is to support things I am working on
Yep.
on behalf of the board. So members serving at the pleasure of the board, the CAO, it was important to clarify that. So I think that should be what it is. Additionally, this is your board order. If you don't like two of the people that I would like to serve on the team, you, by a vote of at least two, have the authority to remove or reappoint or do whatever you want with this committee to ensure this isn't Rachel's committee. So I think it's okay as written because it has, it has two, there's two purposes. It's, or there's two authorities in there. I have some with the recommending, and they're serving at the pleasure of responding to requests that I need to further the board's agendas. But then there's your authority in the appointment.
I guess I don't understand the language of serves at the pleasure of. I think maybe that's where.
It's just common language that's in almost all of your other committees. Just to clarify, you're kind of an at-will committee member serving at the pleasure of the board. It's a very common term in your board order forming and appointing committee members. So it doesn't have to be in there, but that's.
No, and
yeah.
for me, it just creates a question about whether you decide that you want them there or whether we decide that we want them there. And again, I don't see with the sitting board this being an issue, but looking into the future, I see that there is an actual question that could be derived out of this board order as to whether you get the say-so or we get the say-so, and what happens if we don't share the say-so.
You have the say. I read this as I'm recommending who I think would be good on the team, and they are serving in a capacity to support what I'm working on behalf of the board. But ultimately, you have the final say, is how I believe, for whatever reason.
Okay.
I wonder if under item 10, how would it feel to you to replace pleasure with direction?
Oh, yeah.
That
Good?
sounds great. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, I
That's
just
good.
felt like we were creating a potential.
I
Lack
think
of
the way you've written this now, and if you change that last word, that makes sense too. I can envision, not because I've seen similar, not really the same. This is a bit unique in my judgment of my history, but I've seen groups or board members on different organizations. They want a political appointment of some sort, meaning that they want their buddy, their friend, and not necessarily a relative, but they want somebody on who is manifestly unqualified. But here this is limited to county employees. This is not bringing in outsiders. So there's kind of a wall right there. But I can envision worst case, and I tend to think worst case sometimes is somebody could come in here and present company excluded. You get a new board member that goes off the rails and wants his or her friend or buddy or somebody to do something even within the county. So that's why I think there needs to be some language. But as long as it falls back to the commission, they're going to have 2 out of 3 approve it or change it. So you have that built-in protection as well.
Yep, and to get to the buddy doing something or the project, that's actually language in the policy about how staff are assigned projects.
Oh, okay.
So that'll get to that.
All right. Well, we won't worry about that. And worst case, like anything else we're talking about, the board can say, well, we want to change the language, or we don't like this, or it doesn't seem to be working right now, and fix it.
And you would be hearing about how the team is functioning through those regular updates that we described in my the board order.
Great.
Well, I suspect if this went off the rails, it wouldn't take too long, and it would soon be common knowledge.
You would probably hear it before it went off the rails.
Paul, do you have anything on the executive team?
No, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a great step forward, and I appreciate the employees that she selected for it. So I'm looking forward to the work that they're going to be doing.
Me too.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Do you want me to start in on the policy?
What's your preference? I think we're on a roll.
Okay.
I do too. I feel like we have time. We should make use of it. It's so hard to get us all together.
Thank you. Okay, last order. There's not really anything to highlight in the board order itself. It's very dry. It just captures where we are in the process and says, see attached policy. It's basically what the original order set forth that adopted the original policy. So I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about on the order itself. So going to the policy, it's still all in track changes. There's some additional track changes that I'm going to try to highlight since the last version, and some of this came from Mike. Under applicability, I originally had, it just applies to the CAO, Central Services Department, and the board. But given the addition of the personnel requisition process, which we're going to go through, those authorities do apply to elected officials and department directors. So I added those groups in. Similarly with 3.2, authorizes certain authorities. A little bit of expanded language from Mike in 411. So I had originally added, together the three commissioners are the legislative and governing body of the county. Additional language, their authority is exercised by a majority vote in a noticed public meeting. Good with that? Okay. 414 on the top of the first page, on the back, new language, each commissioner has authority to request an agenda item as well as necessary staff work to place an item before the board. So as Mike's been talking about, he really wants our meetings, and I agree with this, to become a place where staff are bringing you recommendations instead of just being in this free-for-all dialogue, which we tend to get into a lot. And so that just gives additional clarity to the commissioners being able to provide, requesting that work be done in preparation for an agenda item. I think 432 under notice and agenda is new. This is about establishing a time for agendas. Don't know how you feel about that concept. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. There's a transition period there. There's a transition period, obviously, with a lot of this stuff, but conceptually, do you like the concept? Do you like the idea of assigning a time to agenda items to help guide board meetings and have an efficient meeting?
I have mixed feelings about it. I think it could be more efficient for sure. I kind of like the fluidity. I think sometimes we talk more than we need to. So that could be, you know, we could pull ourselves back by checking the clock. Excuse me. So I think there's some value in that. But what I wouldn't, I'm not sure the chair should place an estimate of the time needed, but maybe the chair should certainly review it. But also, I'm thinking that staff may have a clearer idea of the time needed for some of those concepts. But I wouldn't want it to be rigid. Like if sometimes we have unexpected conversations that are meaningful, and I wouldn't want it to be rigid in the sense of like, okay, we're out of time, moving on, you know. So I think it's okay with me if we move to like approximate time so that people can plan their day. But I wouldn't be interested in moving to anything that was like a rigid time, like, okay, we're done now.
I agree. I have similar reservations. And this could be something that we pause on and wait until we have the larger discussion about meetings that I want to bring to you later in December.
I support that.
There's also, let me just jump ahead for a second because I split up. Mike had a larger paragraph that regarding this topic that I split into two because it fit better with the policy. So jump to page 5 under meeting decorum. And under the big red text there, it ties to the provision we were just talking about where it says it's the chair's responsibility to monitor the time, et cetera. And so perhaps at this point, we could strike officially establishing a time on agenda items, but leave part of 495 that just says monitor the time.
Contrary, but I actually really like timed agendas.
Okay.
So I'll put that out there. I have a number of meetings where we have timed agendas and there is fluidity to it. It's not a hard and fast, I'm stopping it, but it gives us something to focus toward, because it also gives us, and as Mike has said, I think a way to say, I appreciate the diverse conversation that we're having when in fact we're simply just repeating ourselves, and or the people in the room either way, and it gives a tool to say we're approaching the end of the time for this conversation. So I feel like it's a useful tool, that it doesn't have to be a hard and fast, I'm going to cut you off at 5 minutes if it's useful conversation, but it gives a tool as well as just, a kind of a reminder and a respect for what comes next on the agenda, for which people are waiting for, because it gives everybody an idea of sort of what the flow of the meeting is going to be. So I never feel like it has to be to the minute, but it does give, again, it gives a sense of flow, and it ensures that we do give everything the time it deserves, because sometimes a conversation will end up being very, very long, and then it's the things at the end of the meeting that lose out. So I do like timed agendas, but not necessarily hard and fast.
And the language on page 5 allows for it not to be hard and fast, and describes when you're running over, the chair says, okay, what do you all want to do? Do you want to continue this later? Do you want to just add some extra time now and talk about it, or finish talking about it at the end of the agendas? It gives you some options, and we could update those or revise those as well, but.
Well, I've sat through a lot of both, and I must say, since coming on the commission here, I've seen probably 3 times as many timed meetings as I had in my past various meetings. You say, okay, we're going to meet at 6, and typically we'll be done at 8 o'clock at night or whatever, but it wouldn't be uncommon to go to 9 or 9:30. On the other hand, if there is an agenda, even maybe with a stop date, but if the chair has the latitude to adjust it, and like this simply says, we can continue a bit, or maybe we'll stop talking about that and then bring it up at the end of the meeting. I'm always, I get nervous when people have come from elsewhere, middle of the day, evening, whatever, and they don't have adequate time. But the flip side of that is sometimes they repeat what the next person said, and it can go on all morning if you let everybody. So I think there's maybe a middle ground where the chair has quite a bit of latitude to say, okay, well, we scheduled 15 minutes, we're coming up on that. I wonder if we could maybe ask the other board members, could we take 5 more minutes? And then if there's still matters to take up, we'll take it up at the end of the meeting. So I would say flexibility is the key, but when you say, okay, we're going to stop this conversation at 15 minutes, I'm wondering, what have we left out? Have we made the cream rise to the top, or have we overlooked a lot of stuff? And I'm pretty sensitive to people who come in and, they come in at a time and they've taken time from their day and they don't get to say their piece to their government. And that's always bothered me when somebody cuts them off. So I guess if we have a middle ground and the chair has the latitude to make some adjustments that are reasonable, the only bad side of that is if you get a crummy chair. We don't here, of course, but it's quite possible, and I've seen that where people did not have a clue how to run a meeting. And so it becomes difficult, and staff has struggles with that because, Rachel wouldn't want to necessarily tell the chair you're screwing up, do this. It just, I guess I'm trying to say flexibility and have the language and an understanding that the chair can control a meeting and then do it.
So currently the language does just that.
It does, and that's what I'm saying. They're pretty comfortable with that, and if it says 15 minutes and there's a good reason to go beyond 15 minutes, then the chair would recognize that and make a provision.
I think it also helps your presenters know how much time are you expecting them to take, which helps the meeting stay on track. Because if not, I think public comment I'm not going to say it's different, but it kind of is. Most of our meetings, it really isn't about the public who came to speak. It's about the presentation that we receive from either the person who's presenting from, the watershed council or whatever, and then it is about presentations as they are received from each of our staff members, and then how much we expound and pontificate on what's been put in front of us. So for me, it just feels like it sets that expectation. That again, with flexibility, but does set sort of an expectation. And lets us also know when we think our meeting will end. I know that this is always that kind of funky time between 11 and 12 when we might end and we might not end. So you take a look at the agenda and you make your best guess. But if we actually sort of time it out, that lets us know as well, much closer to what a real end time for that particular meeting is going to be. And I know ours are changeable based on what's on the agenda. But I don't know. I guess I would love to see us try it and then reevaluate it and say, no, don't like it, feels too constrained, or, oh, that was useful. But
you said you had some reservations also. Will you talk about those?
I think it could work really well, but it depends on how the meeting is being ran. And so I think it could be very uncomfortable when staff are presenting and you're like, speed it along, or a commissioner is speaking long-winded and, so this just might be one of those things. It's a learning process for a new procedure that it's a little uncomfortable for the chair to point that out for a while, and then everybody just learns speed along, or just, so my reservations were around the fluidity of the meeting. But I think we could get there. I think it would be great, but it's a little unknown.
Thank you.
Remember, in Congress, they get X amount of time to talk, and they can pontificate or they can yield their time to somebody else. So there are.
I have that provision later.
Yielding my thought.
So part of
No pontificating.
No
pontification. Maybe if it said something like, times are approximate, part of my reservation is that I've been in meetings with timed agendas where the chair has used them as a control issue. And so the chair has cut somebody off or ended a conversation that other people were engaged in and said, okay, we're out of time, moving on. And I've seen it done in ways that are absolutely rude. And that's what I would like to avoid.
That reminds me of another reservation I had. I have had several executive sessions with you all where we were 11:30, 12, everybody's ready to get out of here, but it's an important topic and I am like going like this to get the information to you, and I feel like the conversation is really rushed. And Aaron described a situation where in a board meeting, some items can go long, and so the people on the back end of the agenda also feel rushed. So one of the reservations was the potential for speeding things along that maybe weren't ready to be sped along. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yes.
But again, I think it's something we could work through, but it was just like, how would that work?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if it's okay with the chair, could I? Good discussion, absolutely. Like most things, they can be used well or poorly. The standard in Robert's rules, which usually typically overlays most of the meetings, not that it's a law, but it's at least a normative, is that the anybody on the commission can say, I'd like to have 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, or I want it on the back of the meeting, and I like to make that as a motion. Now that under Robert's rules, that motion has to be dealt with before you proceed, and so the chair then looks back and says, okay, we have a motion, do we have a second? If we have a second, let's vote. And it allows the board to make sure that the chair isn't overwhelming or controlling the meeting, but it also allows your point about other people trying to judge how they're going to make the presentation with just an open-ended, come on down kind of discussion. People don't spend a lot of time trying to decide what is critical to their discussion. And so, and particularly if they're a citizen group, you tend to be, extra careful, as you should be, about them being able to make to spend their time correctly. But it helps for them to kind of structure their discussion. Only comments.
Thank you. Paul, do you have anything on this topic?
Yeah, I do. I like the idea of timed agenda. I think it's just, to Mike's point, I think there's easy ways to extend it when necessary, but I think it gives presenters a realistic idea of how long they should take. And also, I'm a big fan of shorter meetings. And I think, to Mike's point about the cost of these meetings, I'm looking at the people that are just sitting on this meeting now. There's not quite a lot, but these are expensive meetings. And so I like the idea of having it timed, but also having the mechanism, an easy mechanism to be able to extend it when necessary, to Rachel's point as well. But I think it's a great experiment we should try.
I'm laughing at the word experiment. It's a good word.
That is a good word.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Mike talked yesterday about learning, and mistakes that we'll make, and we have to try it to see if it's a mistake. And if it is, we'll learn from it and we'll be like, that did not work or it did. So experiment's a good word.
And we can roll this out when we're ready again, like a lot of these other things. It's not going to be ready on December 1st, unless you want to do it on December 1st. But I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Marion, we want to try it, and the language is good as is.
Okay.
Great. 3.5. I just caught this. This is on the bottom of page 2. We have the agenda item deadline, and I added. Sometimes we shift the agenda deadline because of staff schedules, so I just provided clarity in there in case we move the agenda deadline and someone says, but it says in here that you can't do that. So that was just reflecting what we actually do. I took out the edits I had originally made about public comment being an option for non-agenda items. So all that is back to the original language. I'm on page 4. I did add under 4.84, the chair may at their sole discretion allow public comment on non-agenda items pertaining to matters of the county.
Okay.
On page 5, 495, that's the language we just talked about with adjusting for time in the agenda. Page 6, Commissioner Liaisons. This is language that Mike recommended. So I think it's important to take these one by one. So on page 6, big A, serve as a steward of the county, and instead of an advocate, he actually, I thought, had better language that says serve as steward of the county and develop expertise on behalf of the board and citizens. I think I'm just going to go through all these and then we can go back and hit them. The second one, represent the county, trying to get at that a replacement for the advocacy word to better characterize what it actually is, represent the county and the public with regard to assigned departments and other assigned entities and committees. D, fulfill the coaching, accountability, and oversight needs instead of basic supervisory needs. F, I just pulled out the specificity with board briefings and other board meetings and just had meetings because that's kind of a fluid task that you all do. And then under little b, it is not the role of an individual commissioner liaison to act as a decision maker or policy maker for departmental issues unless such authority is specifically delegated by the board. Again, trying to remove the board from those daily operational decisions unless specified. So I guess questions, discussion on any of those?
Is there a way that we can reword little b. I don't like to immortalize what things are not.
I knew you were going to say that.
Probably heard me say it
Yes,
before.
yes. So it was already in there. And there was just a few words clarifying what it says. But do you have a suggested reword?
Well, I think it might be contained within A to F. Might not be necessary.
Yeah. And actually, it is probably also contained under special projects and requests.
Mhm.
So let's tentatively strike that one, but revisit it after we get through the special projects one, because I think it may be covered there.
Okay.
Other questions or revisions?
So does oversight, is that meant to include supervision?
That's the way I took the revision, yeah. Basic supervisory was, I don't know, kind of reads basic.
Yeah.
I think oversight needs does the intent is better.
Okay.
Okay. On to liaison assignments, top of page 7. That language was there, just clarifying that your liaisons will not be in the Central Services or Veterans Department. The Chief Administrative Officer language is the same for 411.1 and 411.2. Remember, I had the two categories for expressly authorizes and then authorizes as needed. There wasn't really anything that fit into that other category. So this is just one category of authorizations. So 11.2, yeah, everything from here down is new. And it's populated with that decision sheet that we were going line by line at the very end of the last meeting. And so, so I think this captures everything that you're looking at, but let's go line by line. So for contracting, so these are the first 3, big A, big B, big C, are what you are authorizing me to do. Approval of all grant applications prior to submission, approval of temporary right of entry agreements and temporary construction easements, and then delegating the CAO's contract officer authority, which you have delegated in board order to me, to the administrative analyst, which is Isabel, as deemed appropriate by the CAO. So the intent of this is there are some contracts that Isabel should be able to sign that are routine in nature that I don't have to be a part of. I'm still in the mix. I'll still be there for questions and approvals, et cetera, as needed, but this offloads a little bit of my workload and she is more than capable of doing it. So this allows for that. D, the board retains all other contract authorities set forth in the county contract policy. So there was not any desire at this time to adjust thresholds, so that keeps that. I did want to just jump ahead for a second in case you're wondering about this. 411.3, which is on top of page 8, I state Certain authorities set forth in this section and the following section shall supersede any other applicable county policies, including the contract policy and accounts payable training manual. So, you know, I like to do everything in a linear order and make sure everything is cleaned up appropriately. This is a little clunky in that this is kind of an offshoot of authorities, which doesn't sit well with me, but I don't see any other way to do it. So this document this document contradicts the authorities, a couple of them, in the contract policy and the accounts payable manual, which we're going to get to. And I was just calling attention to that. Ultimately, all of this will be updated and cleaned up, but I didn't think it was worth pulling out the contract policy, pulling out, this just says, if it's in here, it supersedes it. Everything else in those manuals is still applicable. So if you're thinking of that, I put that in a later provision. So questions on the contracting?
So where you say approve all grant applications, that's across the county. That's not just the ones that are in your area.
Correct. Right now, the contract policy says you approve all grant applications. So it's been a question by many for a long time. Why is the board approving grant applications? And I'm like, it's in the contract policy. It's something I want to revisit. And it happens quite often where departments submit grant applications and nobody knows about it, or it happens after the fact. And as you know, there's always deadlines, things come up at the last minute. And so this would allow for an expedited process, but still have someone be able to look at them. And I mean, I'm not going to be saying no to anything. It would just, you know, there would be questions if any questions came up about the process or something.
Or somebody gets a grant that requires $100,000 match and nobody thought about that.
Yeah.
And Rachel, then these wouldn't be on the board agenda
Correct.
anymore. Okay, gotcha.
Right, but it would have to come to us for approval once that grant has been awarded. Then in order for us to receive it, there's normally that next step where
Yeah.
we're signing the grant agreement,
Yeah.
which does still come in front of the commissioners, which is the opportunity, Doug, for the commissioners to say, no, we don't have $100,000 for match,
Yeah.
and we're not going to accept those funds, and to not sign that agreement and task Rachel with telling that department head to tell the funder, sorry.
Yeah, as well as having the treasurer's office weigh in. There is a big process for the grant application, and then the submission, and then the wait. And a lot of times, most times I would say, it doesn't go anywhere. And so there's a lot of people touching this process, and it comes before the board, and it's a lot of unnecessary work that yields often nothing. So.
And the same with me, Rachel, you just sign those.
Yeah.
temporary
I mean, yeah, with council, would still look at those, but those wouldn't come before the board.
Yeah. Yes. That makes sense.
Other contracting questions?
Nope, I like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would desire in the future to revisit the dollar amount in relation to as we revisit what financial oversight looks like, which I know is part of the budget roundtable process where we're going to talk about, you know, how do commissioners really see where we are on a regular basis with our budget. So I have a desire as we develop something that I hope will be more useful in telling us whether or not we can afford a contract, then to revisit those contracting amounts, because I think right now we don't put them in context at the time that we approve them, other than to say it's a good contract, but we don't put it into that budget framework. And so I know that we're working on that, and I don't want to derail that. I just want to socialize that for a beginning of what will be a future conversation of how do we monitor our budget in the best possible way.
Okay, personnel matters. Approval of, so this is related to elected officials and department directors. And the approval here is the signing of the paperwork. It's not questioning and all of that, but somebody needs to sign the paperwork. And we're trying to get the board out of operations. And so this would have the CAO approve out-of-state travel requests and reimbursements for any travel for elected officials and department directors. C, take a leadership role to help departments resolve interdepartmental conflict or operational confusion. So this is where Department A and Department B that have different liaisons, if there's an issue, and there needs to be a resolution, I wouldn't be going seeking for this. But if there's a desire to have that resolved, they could reach out.
Good.
Or I guess I could seek it if I identified something that maybe they weren't aware of. Okay, so then D, again, just affirms, because this was very cumbersome to sort through the personnel requisition process and the personnel action form process. And I apologize, the table on the next page got cut off on the track changes version, but I tried to create a table that described this process because it is very convoluted. I had a first column in this table that said what we do now, and then what I'm proposing, and it just got even more convoluted. So you generally know what the process is now. So the table is, where do we want to go? On the bottom of page 7, this is under my responsibilities. I'm affirming what you're going to retain for authorities. Approval of personnel requisitions for reclassifications. Those come before you in a board meeting. Approval of personnel requisitions for unbudgeted positions. I didn't say new or replacement, it's just unbudgeted. The next one was highlighted because I wasn't sure where our other conversation was gonna land with the, in the job description about the HR and risk management director. And again, this is what I was trying to tease out. Somebody has to sign the form.
You.
And I think in this case, it's okay if it's me. But it would be noted, I need to tie back, because if I'm signing the form, the way this whole section is written, it looks like I'm the one approving it. So it needs to say I'm signing it, but the board, through whatever that other language is part of the process. Okay. You are still, someone has to sign my travel. And so approval of out-of-state travel requests for the CAO, approval of travel reimbursements for the CAO. So that would be the chair. And similar to all of these other travel reimbursements and out-of-state, that this would give the board authority to have the chair sign without it going before a board meeting. Does that feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Which is what you were already doing with your liaisons.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'll specify on those last two that the chair would, well, the chair would sign, because of the way the form is, we don't need the whole board to sign, but the chair, the first two come before you in a board meeting. And then you'll get the form after. The third one is me, and the last two, the chair signs, but it's not in a board meeting, correct? Okay, I'll clean that up. Okay, then, we talked about providing me the authority to approve surplus items. So currently, this is the one item that's in the AP manual that says a board order has to be signed. So if I'm signing it, it's not gonna be a board order. So we'll come up with a revised form that's maybe an authorization or something instead of a board order. But approval of declaring capital assets, and then I define it there as surplus. And then everything else is the same. And again, there'll be some time to roll this out, but and then the certain authorities supersede contract policy and accounts payable training manual. This one is really important to me. 411.4, the CAO shall present to the board for consideration and approval any exception to change or change, thank you, to county policy. So I don't have the authority to go outside of policy. So this is new, and I came up with this as I was looking at the personnel action process. And so this is where the elected officials and department directors are given authorities. Same language as with the CAO section, the board expressly authorizes these to elected officials and department directors. Under personnel matters, approval of personnel requisitions for budgeted positions, and the table has other signatures are required too. Approval of personnel action forms for budgeted positions, and approval of out-of-state travel requests for employees. 413 says, in addition to the signature authorities that we've already talked about, which are more of the final approvals, regarding personnel matters, further signatures are also required as specified in Table 1. So I wanted to do that for two reasons. One, I didn't want the provisions in 411 and 412 to imply that just the CAO, just the board, or just elected officials and department directors have signing authority and that's it, because that's not the case. But I started down the road of adding all of the signature authorities for everything in those, and it just got messy. So I'm like, just picking in a table. So the table further elaborates on all the signatures required for all these items. And the highlighted one, we just established that's the CAO. So for budgeted positions, for an elected official or department director, an elected official is in here because a form has to be signed. Obviously, I'm not hiring an elected official, but somebody's got to sign the form. That would be the HR director and the CAO. And if we are hiring, if we're looking to recruit for a director, the personnel requisition form is signed by the HR director and the CAO. Okay.
What if there's a budgeted position, but we're in a position, the county's in a position to either freeze or delay or postpone, much as we're doing currently in some respects. What's the check on that to be sure that everybody knows?
That would come, this policy would remain. This is the standard practice. You would adopt a board order that says from this time to this time or indefinitely until further notice, there's a freeze. There'd be a board order, and you've done that. There's been similar situations like with COVID. And that would supersede, we would say something in there that it supersedes this for that time period. Okay. So for budgeted positions, not elected official, not a department director, the supervisor, department director, and the HR director sign personnel action forms. And I think that's the same for, for personnel requisitions for other employees, department director and HR director. Non-budgeted, and this is for all non-elected employees because I don't think there's a situation where there's not an elected position in a budget. So basically all employees not budgeted, department director, HR director, and the BOC need to approve it. So this is where the BOC would approve in a board meeting, but you would sign the form. And right now, that's not happening. Right now, and this is a piece I was trying to connect. A new position not budgeted comes before the board in an agenda item, and you approve it, but you don't sign it. You don't sign the form. The HR director signs the form with your approval. But I think that to connect those dots from the agenda item, I think your signature or the chair's signature should be on that form. Otherwise, then where was that approved or when was that approved? So that BOC, that's a new piece. And then I think that's the same. Yeah, that's the same for personnel requisitions. You would sign the personnel requisition after it's approved in a board meeting. Reclassifications, again, we're not reclassing elected positions. The personnel action form would be the department director and the HR director, which is proceeding with the hiring, but the personnel, that's the actual hiring of the position. the personnel requisition, which is you reclass someone and you're going out for this position, and you did one of those with the HR generalist position. You reclass the position and then went out for the recruitment, which is a unique scenario. You would approve that. I know this is very convoluted. And maybe there's other ways to clean this up as we get into mapping our processes, but I think this certainly streamlines a lot of what we're doing now and provides clarity, I think, to things that I had to ask questions about just to fill this table out.
Yeah, I think it seems far more efficient, and then I think it's all logical and will require a new form and training for leadership.
Yep. I think several things in here will. Yep.
So question, I know we've pulled the treasurer off all of these because that wasn't really a budget check. Did we talk with their office to find out if their receipt of this form is crucial for the work that they do? And have we thought about how we ensure that that form gets to them? Because I'm wondering if part of the reason they had signature was because they have to have that form for something that feeds into the pay of the person. So if we can just circle back.
Yeah, and if they don't currently get the final form, which I'm guessing they do, if they don't, they could certainly, we can make sure that's part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Last section, special projects and requests. Individual board members should generally not task employees with special projects or requests that have the potential to alter workload or change policy. If a commissioner desires for work to be undertaken, the commissioner shall first present the request to the board as an agenda item for board approval. The request shall include the resources needed to successfully carry out the task. And lastly, the board reserves the opportunity to provide input and guidance on county projects and programs that have the potential to impact county operations or constituents. So this is, again, trying to have some guidance around individual members and the full board assigning projects that aren't currently being worked on. And I can think of many that I've been assigned over the years, like Aaron's work. We've worked on several grant applications that are behavioral health that has nothing to do with something I would normally be working on. I just did it. I can think of situations where community members or groups have reached out, and I'm sure Sarah's done this a lot as well, where they've asked for our participation in their committee, like the Oceanside effort to get cell service in Oceanside. Do you want me to work on those or not? And if so, do you know what the implications are to my time and what that may cost or offset other things that you want me to do? So this is trying to make sure that you have all the authority in the world to assign projects, but it's a little bit more strategic in nature, and it's coming from the board as a whole. It is not meant to, and if it implies that, we need to revise the language. It is not meant to prohibit, restrict the board in having the ability to request information of departments. You know, these are meant to be bigger natured, projects that are bigger in nature. If you need to call and get some information from Tommy and it's going to take an hour or two, I think that would be a reasonable request that Doug could call and make. But if it's, I don't know why I'm picking on Tommy. Tommy, I want you to lead a committee that's going to take 6 months and you need to do X, Y, Z, that should probably come from the board. So this is trying to get at that, and I'm interested to hear if you think it does or where we may need to clean up some of the language.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. I've seen that elsewhere. That, in other words, you don't have somebody go out and wash your truck. Plain and simple.
Well, I could use that.
Mine's car's kind of a mess.
So no, this makes perfect sense that at some point, I don't know what the threshold is exactly, but that was a good example. If you need some information, then you certainly ask. But if it's going to be a 2-week project of considerable hours, you need to go through a process. So I'm good with that as well.
And I think you can make it positive language if you say individual board members wishing to task employees with special projects or requests that have the potential to alter workload, blah, 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 will present the request to the, as a board agenda or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So let's call it out in positive language about what it is, as opposed to isn't. But I like the philosophy behind
Okay.
it. Paul, anything from you?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I think all those are pretty minor edits. I will clean those up and send them to you. The board agenda needs to be posted the 20th because of Debbie being at AOC later that week. So I will have this to you maybe by the end of the week.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because you'll be at AOC. So I'll have it to you by Friday, and then we can finalize those and post them by the 20th.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Mike, any final words on this topic before we move on?
No, ma'am. Looks very good.
Thank you for joining us.
I enjoy it.
Okay. Well, that was great. Okay, given that we got through this now, do you want your board concern to move forward to the board briefing?
Absolutely move to the briefing. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. All right, then we will go back to our agenda and we are at board concerns. Commissioner?
Well, I'll just mention a couple. There's a 2 o'clock meeting remote today about our issues with FEMA and all, and it's through Colpack. Is it all of us going to be online for that, or is that? I think I saw your name and I didn't see yours.
I didn't get the invitation, or if
And
I did, I didn't.
They've been asked, and I didn't see Sarah's on there, who is the regional expert, but there's about 40 people on there, including congressional aides and so on. And so I'll tune into that, but does that supersede or anything else we're doing? Understand we have our own update with the Planning Commission tomorrow.
It does not supersede. I am going to be on that meeting. I assume we all can be. I'll send you the meeting information if you want. That's a 2. So that's why we decided to start the board briefing at 3.
Yeah, that was my main question then.
And I assume that it's fine for us all to be in it because we won't be deliberating. We'll be there for information purposes. And I don't, maybe it will inform what we're doing with the Planning Commission, but maybe not. So.
Well, I noticed Colpack has a habit, which I'm going up to Astoria tonight and have a couple of sessions with them tomorrow on other matters, but they seem to schedule everything on Wednesday, which, doesn't work so well for us, but others have their board meetings at that time.
Other days.
It is what it is. So, no, okay, so that's it. Second item I had, I just wanted to report as of the close of business yesterday, the elections are done in terms of receiving ballots. If a ballot is not received by 5 o'clock yesterday through the Postal Service, I don't believe they're allowed to accept any more. And those that came in as late as yesterday still have to have the postmark of 8 o'clock p.m. on election day. And there's not much coming in. And so I think in Tillamook County, we finished just somewhere under 80%, which the prediction was more like 84, 85, or 86. But, right now there's 16,000 plus ballots in out of 21,000 and probably some more that have come in here yesterday but no other real issue. So the election is officially done, but not certified. And so I've been following this and what they do. And I will say also there's some plans after the election is certified. Our county clerk has asked to bring in some of the workers that have been with us and have some recognition. And I said, absolutely. There's at least one individual who's been doing this for 38 years. And so I think they get a small stipend that I think the statute provides no less than minimum wage or something like that. But, it's hardly a money-making effort. They come in because they do their civic duty, so to speak. So there'll be a point where we can have them here and recognize what they do and what they bring to the whole system.
Oh, I'd love to. That's a great idea.
So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything?
No, I'll just bring mine this afternoon. I think that sounds great. We'll
Okay.
talk about it then.
Terrific. All right, so we have, in terms of other meetings and announcements, we are meeting, as you just heard, we are meeting this afternoon at 3 p.m. rather than 2, because we'll be in a FEMA buyout meeting from 2 to 3. So our board briefing is this afternoon at 3 p.m. here in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room, 106, Tillamook County Courthouse. The commissioners will attend a public meeting tomorrow, Thursday, November 14th, 2024 at 7 p.m. for a joint discussion with the Tillamook County Planning Commission regarding the Federal Emergency Management Agency's biological opinion. The meeting will be held at the Port of Tillamook Bay Conference Center, and the virtual meeting link will be posted prior to the meeting on the Department of Community Development's homepage.
Can I ask a quick question? Conference center, I've seen people saying, is that the boardroom or is that the officer's mess?
I think it's the boardroom. I'm assuming it's the boardroom. Is Sarah on? Can we confirm?
Sarah
Maybe
is
not.
not on, I don't
Okay.
believe.
So it's 4000 Blint Boulevard,
Thank you.
and so I think that's the boardroom.
Yeah, that's the office.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna be big enough, in my opinion, just from what I've heard.
That's possible.
And I think we'll need some people directing traffic outside potentially, because on Facebook, I'm seeing
I
it
saw
as
that.
both, and I didn't chime in because I didn't know which was which.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, we should reach out to and talk to Sarah about that.
Yeah.
Okay. The commissioners will attend a Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee meeting on Friday, November 15, 2024 at 10 a.m. at the Oregon Department of Forestry headquarters, 2600 State Street, Building C in Salem.
And that is actually fully remote this month, I believe, so.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
The Local Public Safety Coordinating Council teleconference will be held on Monday, November 18, 2024 at 12 p.m. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room, 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse here, 201 Laurel Avenue. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 155-859-952#. The commissioners will attend the annual Association of Oregon Counties Conference in Eugene from Monday, November 18th through Friday, November 22nd, 2024. Therefore, there's no community update teleconference scheduled for Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. There's no Board of Commissioners meeting and no board briefing scheduled for Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. The commissioners will attend a Tillamook Lightwave meeting on Tuesday, November 26, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. at the Tillamook PUD in the Carl Raw Meeting Room in Tillamook. And Thanksgiving Day is an observed holiday for the county and for Oregon State Circuit Court. All the county offices in the Tillamook County Courthouse and the Tillamook County Library, administrative offices in the Jail and Justice Facility, Public Works Department, Department of Community Development, Surveyor's Office, and the Health and Human Services Department and clinics will be closed Thursday, November 28th, 2024, and Friday, November 29th, 2024. And with that,
Mary,
yes.
During the community call today, you were questioning having the community call. Did you affirm that we are not?
Well, what I didn't know is that had been on our agenda last week. So let's talk about it for a minute. I generally prefer to have them if we can, because people are tuning in and people in the community have them scheduled, and people in the community are regularly tuning in. So I know that we've done it remotely before. I personally have done it remotely from the AOC conference, and it seems to me like we could. So I didn't know that it had already been posted as canceled. So
I won't be able to. I'm sitting on a panel at 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning, so I will be unavailable.
okay,
And I would be in transit that morning, fairly early to get down to Eugene by noon, so I probably would not either.
okay. So what do you think? I just feel like there's so many people involved in that call. We should have it if we can. What do you guys think?
I will leave it up to you. I think if we've already announced that we're not going to have it, we've probably lost some of our people and some of our viewership. But if they didn't see that, then, agreed, they would be assuming they would be there. So
Did
I can
did we communicate to everybody who is on the call that we're not having it?
I have not communicated to everybody, no.
And KTIL doesn't know?
Other than the announcements that we've done, you know, on the radio.
Okay,
You should have it.
so I think we should have it. So cancel what I just said about, we will not have a board meeting or a board briefing next week, but we will have the community updates call, and I will chair it remotely from Eugene, and that'll be fine. And I'll send out, or ask Debbie to send out a confirmation to folks who are on the call that we are indeed going forward with it. And if it's shorter, you know, I'll explain why you two aren't on it, and
Please,
Well,
yeah,
I
give
may
my
be,
regrets.
If I can, maybe I'll pull over to the side of the road
Okay,
and call
good.
in.
Okay, good. Yeah, good solution. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? If not, this meeting is adjourned at 11:32 a.m. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, good to get through all that.
Yeah.
Yay!
It's excellent. Thank
Yes,
you, Rachel.
thank you, Rachel. You have a huge body of work
Yeah.
there, and I know that what we see is, there's been so much more because of all the additional things that you have, the strings that it runs out to the next thing that you're already working on, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
And also, I didn't want to say this in the meeting, guys, because I didn't want to start the conversation, but at any point, well, you don't have to sit.
Oh,
At
a
any-
lot of stuff to.
At any point, that you'd like to revisit getting some more help with HR, like, you know, I am feeling badly that we said, yeah, Rachel, go ahead and be interim HR director. You know, I feel like we missed an opportunity to get you some interim help.
I am finishing up one investigation. I didn't realize what went into all of this. It's just,
It's a lot.
yeah, it's just, I probably spent a full day on one investigation. So, Erin and I talked about this, that having the individual from Barrett's is capable of doing this, that the next one that comes up, would be. Otherwise, it's not